sisterhood, growing up, and that most complicated of subjects, family. Today's book explores all three as my guest and I explore the passage of time and what it means to leave something behind on this week's episode of Beyond the Manuscript. But before we get into that, I need to introduce my guest for today. Growing up in the northern suburbs of Chicago, my guest today got her start over in advertising and then eventually made her way over to writing memoirs. Her work has appeared in Magic of Memoir, Inspiration for the Writing Journey, Adelaide Literary Magazine, and blogs for the Chicago Writers Association. Here today to talk about her debut novel, The Wisdom of the Willow, please help me in welcoming my guest today, Nancy Chadwick. How are we doing today, Nancy?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Cooper. How are you?
I am ecstatic that you're here, and I'm glad, like the people who don't know this who are watching the show, we just got over a huge technical hurdle of getting the studio set up here today, so I'm glad we actually got everything sorted, and that you're here. We can have this lovely talk about your book. So, to kind of get things started today, can you please tell us all about The Wisdom of the Willow?
Yes, I sure can. The Wisdom of the Willow is about four sisters, and the four sisters face some life changes, and they call upon the wisdom that is taught to them by their mother under a willow tree to navigate those life changes.
One of the things that while I was reading about your book here, is that it really kind of connected me, and I think a lot of people do this, where they kind of compare and contrast books people already know. And so for me, the book that came to mind was Little Women. Was there any or at all inspiration from Little Women about your book?
Um, no, actually, the inspiration that came for writing The Wisdom of the Willow came from when I wrote my memoir Under the Birch Tree. And one
Mm.
of the takeaways readers got from reading my memoir was how relatable the experiences were in the book that I wrote about in my story. So I took what the biggest takeaway from readers and applied it to The Wisdom of the Willow. And when I wrote about the life changes that these women went through, contemporary women in their probably mid 40s, present day, I wanted to make sure that the experiences those women were having were relatable. So that was probably, the main factor in trying to generate the story of these of the sisters in the book.
Gotcha. And so when you have so many kind of upfront characters in a book like this, what challenges did you face trying to differentiate, and make each one of like their own character in their own right? What was that like?
It took a lot of patience, a lot of organization too. I wanted to create diverse characters, not only probably in a physical sense, but also in their personalities and how they handle themselves within the family, within their experiences, and how they deal with things. And in order for me to do that, I wanted to create alternating point of views. And I knew as
Mm.
soon as I was going to do this, I was probably stepping into a sticky wicket, probably making things more difficult than I needed to. But it was my way for a reader to make a deep dive into the personalities of how each character is. So it was just a matter of organization and writing each character in their dialogue and their experience in the scenes, and then basically putting it all together and
Mm.
alternating the points of view as the story progressed in the book.
Very cool. And like you mentioned before, like this is your debuting novel here, but you're no stranger to writing. Like you said, you have a memoir coming out. But I'm always curious whenever this happens. What was the transition like, going from being a memoirist
Mhm.
to novelist?
Yeah, it was a very organic transition, actually. I had spent my writing years writing memoir and personal essay, and to me, that was a very safe writing. It was secure, it was writing what I knew, it's writing a lot of reflection and takeaway. And I thought, being a writer, I wanted to be challenged. I thought, well, what's next? Yes, I thought of fiction, but to me, fiction was just really daunting.
Mm.
Afterwards, you have to make stuff up, really. You have to make up characters and plot and action. And to me, I thought, oh, I'm not sure if I could pull that off. So, the organic kind of way this happened was I was taking a walk, as I usually do in the morning, out kind of in the woods nearby, and I veered off a path onto kind of a short, narrow bridge, and a branch of the Chicago River runs underneath the bridge. And I looked
Mm.
over, and I must have been at the right place at the right time, and I saw the sun striking the water, and it just really sparkled. And to
Mm.
me, it looked like diamonds were sparkling. And I just looked over and I thought, this is a really cool scene. I mean, it's something that's really happened. It's
Hmm.
something that, probably won't happen again in nature, the exact same moment. So the more I looked at that, the more I thought about, well, what about a little boy that's kind of at the banks and poking it with a stick and his father nearby? And I walked home and I sat down and I thought about maybe an older sister had experienced that before and said, oh, come on, I want to show you something really neat. So one thing led to another, and I sat down and I wrote a short story called When the Sun Kissed the River, and that was published in Adelaide Literary Magazine. And that was just the start of the whole thing. And I
Mm.
knew that I could write fiction. I didn't have to totally make it up because I was there at a setting and a scene that really happened, and I drew upon that, and so fiction kind of took off from there.
Gotcha. Well, looking back on your work, there does seem to be a running theme of integrating lessons of nature
Mhm.
into your work. How important is that for you as a writer?
When I finished, it's very important. When I finished writing The Wisdom of the Willow, I really kind of learned many different things. The first being that nature writing, writing about nature and the natural world, is really in my writerly blood. Um, I like writing about the simple in a complicated world, and Lord knows we're in a complicated world right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, stepping out into the natural world is just a way for us to just be silent, um,
Mm-hmm.
and draw upon things that are surroundings, and to listen better, to see sharper things, and to really create that mental space that we're all challenged to be in this time and place. So, I started out really young. I was just as a kid, I was always a walker. I loved to walk in the snow and, and ride my bike in the summer. And I started journaling when I was 15 and wrote a little poem called To a Tree.
Mm-hmm.
And, pretty simple, but I guess it was kind of my coming of age and realizing we all have a place in this world where mine is and trying to figure out, how I fit in. So, writing about the natural world has just been a theme through all of my nonfiction and fiction writing.
Gotcha. In that same kind of sense, if you had to put like a kind of you put your finger on it, what would be a difficult lesson taught by nature that you think has a value of itself for people to learn?
Probably a tough thing is to learn about would be the cycles of nature. I mean, everything draws down, everything dies. Trees come down, they get sick, species die out. And that's kind of a difficult thing because you want
Mm-hmm.
everything to be and to
Yeah.
remain as is. But yet, there's always something rotating and recycling and coming anew, and that is really, the optimism and the hope that is a lesson in there, to hope for that and to look for that in our day. That
Mm-hmm.
it's not always a doom and gloom. That there's always something, a rebirth, and something that'll come back.
Yeah. I think there's something very I don't know humanistic in that sense that as people we're usually always trying to kind of create permanence, right? We're trying to make things that last because the our early ancestors realized, oh, nature comes, nature goes, but it tends to come back in different waves and shapes, and then human beings kind of fight against that by trying to create buildings that'll last 1,000 years,
Sure.
or statues, or art, and that kind of stuff. So I think that might be kind of an intrinsic kind of conflict of like nature is constantly changing while human beings don't want to.
Mm.
But the thing is, we're part of nature, and we tend to uh, change whether we'd like to or not.
Yes.
I think that's part of the human process, I think.
Yes, yeah. And it's just that I go back to that finding that simple, going into nature, a park, wherever it may be, finding a little sit spot, just a little place to sit and be quiet.
Sure.
And, just kind of take it all in. And, when you can kind of block out all the other noise in your head and what you came from and just tune into what you have in front of you, that's a good thing for
Hmm.
somebody to just kind of um, you know be in a better thought process.
Sure. Um, so one thing that's another big running theme, I think, in a lot of your work is the concept of place and home. Why are they such important concepts, do you think, in storytelling?
Because I think every one of us is always trying to find our place to be. And once we're in a place, we might question, is this the place I'm supposed to be? Is there more? Am I supposed to be doing something else? A lot of people go into the reinvention, especially, after the pandemic. People just left their jobs and reinvented and went somewhere else. So a concept of home, um, is really, I guess the saying is home is where the heart is. It's where you find comfort and security, and that could be anywhere. So we're always kind of striving to find that base point, where home is, where we're supposed to be. What is my life purpose? Which is what one of the characters in the book she questioned. Is this my purpose, just to kind of be here and try to figure this out?
Hmm.
Is my friend, is that her purpose, to be a wife and a mom and raise a family?
Hmm.
So they're kind of big questions that sometimes we don't always try to answer, but yet we're faced to look at from day to day.
Hmm. So let's talk a little bit more about that for a second. So of reinvention specifically, because like you said, in recent times, a lot of people did that. Like you said, they
Mhm.
realize that maybe they're not fully fulfilled in the career that they're at, or they don't like where they're. Like the part of the area of the world where they're living, or a million different things, and people just said, "Hey, I'm gonna go find my new me
Mhm.
in a different side of the world." For your opinion, what does that look like? What for you? Like, what does someone need, and what is the important steps someone should take in order to accomplish that?
I think it's the main thing that comes to mind is somebody really needing to get real with themselves, maybe.
Mm,
Um, and instead of doing what's obligated or what people think they should be doing or
mm,
how they should be doing something. And that is a real brave, courageous thing for somebody to stop and say, I'm not happy. I'm not having fun.
mm-hmm,
This isn't what I want to be doing.
mm-hmm,
Um, but yet there's a huge guilt associated with that, I think, but
mm,
I've been doing this for 10, 15, 20 years.
yeah.
It's all I know. And going out into a world that is an unknown or tapping into an area, it's very fearful. And
Mm-hmm,
people can be kind of crippled. Fear can hold
sure.
that back.
I think too is I think a big part of growth, especially internally,
Mhm.
it would be confronting parts of yourself that you can recognize as, oh, I don't like myself like this, or I don't like these past mistakes that I've made, and learning how to accept them and then move on. Because a lot of times people they can be really paralyzed, like you
Yeah.
said, by guilt, trauma,
Hmm.
disappointment, and because those are really scary, and they can also be pretty emotionally hard to do and take a long time to actually process. A lot of people are like, well, that's a big boulder and a big hill to push up, and I just don't want to do that. Um, in that regard, I'm just kind of curious: is what would be your first steps into doing something like that? And just because I think you mentioned a little bit more of like first acknowledging I'm not in a place where I want to be
Hmm.
is really important.
Hmm.
But then what?
I think really taking some baby steps, and not first of all, not only acknowledging, this isn't working for me, but to a little self care that that's okay, that you're feeling that way, and that this is happening to you, and to not rush. What's the
Yeah.
rush? Take your time, do some diligence. If that means talking to other people in an area you're interested in, or just kind of dabble in an area that you think you might be passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but just to go slow and take your time. And I think it is all about time. As we get older, what we in our 20s, what we thought we'd be in our 40s, may not be exactly where we panned out to be.
Mm-hmm.
Our 40s, we could be kind of still in the mentality of being in our 20s or vice versa,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But the point is that as our years progress, we are put into different situations. The time, our external changes, our environments changes, our morals and what's important, our purposes change. So yeah, it's just important just to take those little steps.
Sure. Well, lovely tangent we just kind of went on there, but I do want to get back to your book here a bit. So obviously, the title of the book is "The Wisdom of the Willows." Here, what is the symbolic importance of a willow tree for you,
Um,
or in this book?
yeah, right. I I've always loved enjoyed telling a story using a metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
So for the willow, it's characterized by bending and swaying, but it never breaks. And a lot of books
Mm,
are written by, maybe about oak trees, the mighty oak, and strong and sturdy and this and that. So I kind of did something a little different. But the willow being, bending and swaying and never breaking was really a metaphor for the sisters in this book, for the family,
mm-hmm.
and going through what they do and their experiences and their challenges. They may bend and sway just the same thing and have to go with the flow and the hardships, but they will never break. And there is that strong family bond that keeps them together. Separately, they're trying to find their ways and where they're supposed to be, but family is central, and that kind of brings them together.
So, you are a published memoirist. You're about to be a hopefully wildly successful debuting novelist. What's next for Nancy Chadwick? Or what are you working on now or looking forward to?
Yes, I am working on a third book. It's titled Mercy Town.
Mm,
It is tentatively due out next fall of 25. This book is fiction. There are no trees involved, so I did completely, um,
it's just bricks,
diverged.
nothing but bricks the whole way,
Right?
right?
Yeah, yeah. There is a little bit of still that natural world involved, but that short story I told you about that was published, I fast forwarded it to about 10 years. So the
Mm,
characters are 10 years older. It is about an accidental shooting in a small town in way northern Wisconsin here in the States. Um, and a forgiveness of the shooter. An accidental shooting happens, and forgiveness and the town finding mercy on the accidental shooter, who is Native American and couldn't be the most upstanding, wisest person, all in his settlement there, and it
mm,
was just a horrible, horrible accident.
mm. I see. Very interesting. Oh wow. Yeah, there's a lot of cool concepts there. that I'm sure you could explore and play with and stuff
Yes,
like that.
yeah.
Well, when that book comes out, I would definitely love to have you back on the show for
Oh,
sure.
great. I would love
Yeah.
to do that.
Excellent. Good. And so, before we end up wrapping up here today, where can people find your stuff?
My stuff can be online, certainly bookshop.org, Amazon, or you can go direct to my website at nancychadwickauthor.com. There are links there to buy the book and more bio information and some of my work as well.
Of course. And like always, the links to all of this stuff, of course, is going to be in the description down below. Okay, I think that's going to be it for us for today. I want to thank my guest Nancy Chadwick for coming on to Beyond the Manuscript, which of course is powered by manuscripts where you never write alone. Nancy, thank you again one more time for being on the show here today.
Great. Thank you, Cooper, for having me.